Alright, in the last video we saw how we can add validation to our form, and we saw also how we can add post notification messages when we add a new player or edit player. So in this video we want to see how we can delete a player, so we can be able to delete these empty spaces that we added to our project. So let's get started with that. So I'm going to head back to Visual Studio Code, and where do we have that delete? If we go to the players detail.html, this is where we have our delete button. So now we want to add the click handler for this button, so that when we click the button, we can add the function to delete the data. So we add that click handler here, and we can add the method and we can call it on delete. Right here, and now we're going to create this method. But what do we need for this method to be able to delete? We need the ID. We need the ID of the player to be able to delete the player. So we can pass the ID here, player ID we want to delete. So we can say player dot ID, and let's come here and click create this method. So here we have ng on init, so on delete method here. We want to pass the ID, so let's say ID of string, and then we are going to call our service right here. So this dot player service dot, we'll call a delete function here, and then pass the ID, and when it's deleted we can add a message that it has been deleted successfully. But we can also use a confirm dialog from JavaScript to ask if we are sure we want to delete. So we can do something like this: if confirm, and ask like, are you sure, the question mark. Then after that we can call our delete method here. Alright, this is looking good, but we have a lot of errors here. First, this player ID is string or undefined. You know what, we can make this on delete without the ID. Yes, we can make the on delete without the ID, and we don't have the ID here, but then we have the ID here on the component, so we can just pass the ID here. So this dot ID, we can pass it to the function from here because we already have it defined here. Okay, so we have this is good now. The only issue is we need to create this delete method, and we can do that in our service. So if we go here, now the position.service player.service, we want to add our delete method. So we're going to type delete, and then we want to pass in the player ID. You can just call it ID. It's going to be a string, and we just want to call our object. So db dot object player, and we want to go to players where we have it here, and we want to append the ID to it. So I'm going to add another slash, and then we append the player ID which we have passed here. So I'm going to say player ID, and then we want to do dot remove. So this is going to remove it from the list. Alright, so this is our delete method here. If I go back here, we still have this error. So, and this is because this is a string or null. The way we can fix it is we can force this to be a string, or we can ask that method to take a null value or a string. So since we need a string here, so I'm going to create a local variable here called id equal to this dot id, and I force it to be a string. And here I want to check if that value is a string and not null. So if id, then I want to call this service, and instead of that I want to pass id. Alright, let's check this and see if it works. So we have this detail here, it's just empty. Let's try to delete it. Okay, we have an error. Let's inspect. It's nothing on the console. Okay, let's just go back and try that again. So let's remove this other if statement here, and I think it should be good because we probably didn't need that if statement. If I try to delete, I'm not getting that confirm, so it's actually with that confirm box. So if I just delete that, we don't have the confirm now, and I say if id, then we call their service to delete. And let's just make sure this on delete function is matching with this. Okay. So the issue is that we haven't saved the HTML file for the player's details component. That's why we don't get hooked to this on delete method. So let's save that file now, and then let's go back to our component, and now let's bring back this method the way it was before. Just going to do, okay, we had it this way, so I'm going to save it now, and let's go back, and if we try to delete it, we get the JavaScript confirm box, and it says if we are sure we want to delete, and if I hit OK, it's gone. But then we'll see that it's empty because it doesn't redirect us back to this page. So what we want to do is, after deleting that, we want to redirect to the home page. So we want to pass in the router here. So I'm going to do private router. I'm going to import that. And after we do that delete, we want to pass this dot router and we want to pass it with the slash. This router navigate, and then we want to pass it with the slash like this. Okay, so I'm going to save this, and we're going to go back to our page, and let's say I want to delete this. Are you sure you want to delete? Yes. So that's gone. We can delete this as well. Are you sure? Yes, that's gone. We can delete Carlos Tevez. We get in this dialog box. It's the default JavaScript dialog box, and it's ugly. So what I would like to do in the next video is I'm going to add a library called bootbox that will give us a nice confirm dialog box to use, which is better than the default JavaScript one, and we'll be doing that in the next video.